Okay, cool. Welcome everyone. Hi. So welcome to our panel tonight. We've got some very exciting speakers for us all. I'm going to start with a quick acknowledgement to country. So I pay my respects to the traditional owners of their land and to their elders past, present and emerging. So we're going to start with get all of our panelists to do a quick introduction, give a bit of a background on themselves, and then just briefly what environmental engineering means to you, and kind of how you've ended up in that field and where you very briefly kind of think it's going, and then we'll start to get into some questions and get a bit of a Q&A going. So just quickly, we've got 3 panelists in the room and then 1 currently on Zoom. We should have 1 more joining us, so we might have her pop in briefly, but we'll start in the room and just pass it on.
Hi, thanks, Emma. Can I sit down?
You can.
Hi, guys and girls, everybody. My name's Tony McAllister. I'm a civil engineer, sorry. But a civil engineer, I did my undergraduate degree in Townsville, came down here, started working with a large consultancy that starts with a G, and got made redundant after 6 months because I found out that I'd been put on spec, that they were going to win all this work, which they didn't win. But then I subsequently landed a job in the government doing water supply and sewerage that I'd done 13 lectures on at uni, and that was my job. But fortuitously, I really liked it. It's a standard joke, it's shit for you and bread and butter for me. But in the government department that I worked in, it was where the Water Quality Council used to be of Queensland. I got rotated in there and I went, oh my God, I love this. And stayed there for a couple of years, did my master's here at UQ, and then left there after 5 years and got into consulting. And I've been consulting ever since. So my background is in coastal engineering, water quality modelling, catchment management, hydraulics, hydrology, etc. What is environmental engineering to me? All of that stuff. I'm not a particularly big believer, especially in the consulting game, in pigeonholing people. We have scientists doing modelling. One of my best staff is a mechanical engineer who then got into water and environmental work. I have science graduates from Griffiths doing modelling for me. To me, it's about the application of common sense, intelligence and enthusiasm in what you do. So the sort of work we do on a day-to-day basis, from the broad environmental perspective, are studies looking at how we can safely and environmentally friendly discharge recycled water into waterways, how we can build offsets, mangrove forests, freshwater wetlands, how they work, how big they have to be, how do we do an urban development and reduce its environmental footprint by using cool roofs, rainwater tanks, water sensitive urban design, all of that sort of stuff. So if you think about all of those things, they've all got the environment.
Thanks, Tony. My name's Bill Clark. I'm in civil engineering now. I've been at UQ for 30 years. 29 of those years have been in chemical and civil engineering. I'm now Director of Teaching and Learning in civil, so it was difficult to do that and stay in chemical. But my heart's still very much attached to chemical engineering. And I guess that's moulded my perspective of what environmental engineering is. I think environmental engineering is a combination of technical know-how, skill, philosophy, and policy. So people working in environmental engineering have to be, I think, widely read, know what's going on. So with the election, for example, I would expect anyone who's doing environmental engineering is fairly conversant with what the various policies are being offered, because that's where impact is going to happen, how we're going to change the world for the better, because generally most people are very busy just with the day-to-day things people have to do, and we need to constrain what we do so that we protect the environment if any of you watched Four Corners last night, for example, they were talking about the Tarkine, which is a very unique temperate forest in Tasmania, which is also the place of a tremendous resource for tin, nickel, and some other metals that are needed for renewable energy. So that tension there needs technical know-how and policies that are informed by people who are very technically competent, which all of you people in the room are and will continue to be in your careers.
Hello everyone, my name is Xiwan Zhang. I'm from the School of Chemical Engineering. I'm the chair professor and the director of UQ Center. I'm new to this school, and I wanted to highlight I'm an environmental engineer, even though I'm from the School of Chemical Engineering. So my bachelor, master, PhD, also 3 degrees in environmental engineering. So why actually I chose the environmental engineering at the beginning? I graduated in China, and you can imagine 25 years ago, I started my bachelor, I think in 1996. At that time in China, the environment pollution, I think many of you might have saw the news, are quite terrible. So I think, I know actually environmental engineer can help to protect the environment. So that's why I choose that. And so I learned, how to purify the water, how to purify, the air, and how to handle the solid waste. And after I got my PhD degree in 2006, I moved to the Singapore. Singapore, a very beautiful country, they do very well, in the how to protect the environment. So initially I worked in the Nanyang Technological University for a few years. Then I said I needed to learn the skills from industry, so I quit and joined the industry and took the R&D manager position over there. And then in 2011, I got an opportunity and got a fellowship from the Australian Research Council. So that fellowship brought me to UQ. So I worked at UQ 10 years ago, from the 2011 to 2012, just 1 year, same school. And very, very short. Then after that, I moved to Monash. So I stayed over there for 9 years. And last year, got this opportunity led me to move back. So what I can say for the environmental engineering, at the beginning, when I, did my bachelor, master, and PhD. That time it looks like just protect the environment. But what I can say actually from the over the last 20 or 30 years, environmental engineering means a lot, just more than actually just protect the environment. And this include, like resource recovery. To me, it's more about sustainable development. And you might say actually for the environmental engineer, engineering student, looks like actually you know everything. Use my experience, you learn biology, chemistry, hydrology, everything, even some, economic knowledge in everything you need to learn, I think. But looks like you know everything. When you actually go to deeper, one of the suggestions looks like, you need to learn more for no matter what you want to do. Yeah, quite interesting actually, I think, degree. Maybe I'll stop here.
Awesome. So we'll move to Zoom. Have we got?
Can you hear me? Is that working?
Yep. And would you say the mic's over there?
Yes.
So am I good to go? No?
Yes.
Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, great. Couldn't agree with that final statement more about when you dig a bit deeper, there's just so much more to learn. I'm well in over my head right now with this distributed energy transition stuff that everyone's trying to figure out what to do. So I graduated in 2009. So, and I don't even, I didn't, when I got invited to this, I was like, I'm still an environmental engineer. And then I thought about it, I thought, yeah, I probably am actually, you can't get away from it. So my background was, I worked at, when I graduated, I did environmental approvals for major oil and gas projects in Queensland. And that was a lot of stakeholder engagement and a lot of sort of, landholder and looking at all these different variable issues around those major projects. And then I moved and did similar stuff over in London. And then I sort of pivoted a little bit and ended up doing a PhD more in business strategy and sustainability at the University of Hamburg. And there I really connected across Europe with a lot of the different questions that they were asking through this European Commission-led kind of program I was involved in. And I thought I was going to stay there, but then in the end, the path back to where I am now in Sydney just became too kind of easy, I thought. And then COVID and all these things happened. So I sort of have moved back permanently. But here now I work at an NGO called Climate Kick. So the KIC stands for Knowledge Innovation Community. And I'd say I'm running a few different projects, and the thing that connects them all is realizing that in these big, wicked problems that we're dealing with, like energy transition, circular economy, a lot of anything to do with like links to the environment, often you need a lot of different types of people and different types of voices to work together. And there's a role for this, an NGO and a sort of independent broker who's strategically minded, but can also bring those different voices together, but then target it towards action. You have to also design what you're going to do. So the question, what does environmental engineering mean for me? So I scribbled down a few quick statements because I'm also from the time, I don't know if it's still the same now, but where it was like very much a chemical engineering, civil engineering cut. So we had a lot of process engineering stuff. And I think that was a really key theme in that, how it relates to what in the business I'm currently working at, we use the term systems thinking all the time, and this idea of thinking in terms of systems and how you pull in different aspects to it. And the other thing I liked that Bill mentioned, philosophy and politics and human change, I feel like that's actually the work often. You need to be able to like understand that technology stuff, but that has been the huge lift and huge learning that I've had over my career. And I guess, I've always been interested in the environment. I thought this also made me think, what started this whole thing of, enrolling in environmental engineering and making a career out of this stuff? And I think I remember back to in primary school, we were talking about the salinity problem at the Murray-Darling. And, if you're going to have all these trees and do this sort of farming practices, you're going to have issues. And in long term, it's not going to be, it's going to cause a lot of issues and be unproductive farming land. And it's like, my 10-year-old self looked at that and was like, this is stupid. We've got to change this system. Unfortunately, it hasn't, as much as we keep trying, there's still so many issues and so many dumb decisions, it seems. But I guess that's our plight as environmental engineers, to continue to try and be optimistic. So it's good to be.
So I guess I'll get us started with a few questions. And we've talked a lot about kind of the broad range of skills that you need as an environmental engineer and the process of constantly learning. So I guess I want to start with a question about education. So how do you think that environmental engineering should be taught? Should it be its own major? Should it be integrated into a lot of majors? How are we teaching it right currently? So I might start with our UQ staff, and then if any of our other panelists have thoughts.
Maybe Bill is the right person. Yeah, because I just try, I have no idea what is our current.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Amber. That's a very good question. So most of you will be, well, perhaps, certainly if you're in your final year of engineering, you would be the graduating, well, probably graduating with the degree you committed to 3 or 4 years ago. We do have a new major in environmental major, which can be taken by both civil and chemical engineering students. So I guess what we're saying there is that there is a philosophy and approach to environmental engineering that we believe is common to all students. I imagine even a mechanical engineer could come in and do this major. They would probably perhaps need a bit of upskilling to jump into the major, but it has been designed so that civils and chemicals can both do this major. And the courses we have are circular economy, systems thinking, as Genevieve said, or systems modelling, modelling environmental systems. We have a course on environmental phenomena, and there are skills that the civils and chemicals bring to that course, some pre-knowledge, but we have a set of skills that we believe are unique to the environment. So that's called environmental phenomena, and the last course is. Excuse me, I can't remember its exact name. It's a course taught by Stephen Pratt, but it involves looking at environmental systems. The centerpiece of that course is a field trip, an overnight field trip to Stradbroke Island, where you're looking at natural environmental systems. So and then from there are different strands that you could follow. Either more on Tony's side, the hydraulics, hydrology side, or Ziwang's side, more on the chemical side. But we do believe there's a core, and that is centred around the environment and understanding how the environment works. And again, I bring back that word that Genevieve introduced, systems thinking. Ziwang.
Yeah, maybe I'll just share my own experience. I just said I'm new to UQ, so at this moment I couldn't comment on UQ's course structure. Personally, I think the 3 key skills or knowledge for environment engineer you need to have. One is the water process or water treatment. Another one is the air pollution control. A third one is the solid waste management. So when I say these 3 key ones, particularly you are able actually to design the system which can do that. It's not just actually single unit. Maybe I use the water treatment as an example. Like if you are asked, some of you are asked to design a wastewater treatment plant for one city, maybe the Brisbane. Chemical engineer might be good at design, the single unit, and they are trained to do that. For environmental engineer, you need to be able actually to come out as the best whole process rather than just a single unit, because you have to make sure actually there's a whole system function actually because environmental friendly and energy efficient. That's something actually this environmental engineer needed to contribute. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'm probably the last one, right, because I'm not a academic. So I'm going to come at it from the perspective of being a consultant and, you know, running a consulting team. I personally think, and again, in the water and environment space, my company, Water Technology, does water and environmental. So we do coastal waterways, hydraulics, hydrology, water quality, and planning and resilience type work. But Genevieve, sorry, everybody's promoting you for this, but that systems word is absolutely key. And if there's one thing that I talk to our staff about, it's about thinking about systems. But to answer your question, Amber, I think the environmental engineers and environmental scientists and staff who thrive well in my environment are the ones who've got a pretty good understanding of most processes, but a realization that you can never do a degree and then come out and know everything. Because like one of my young graduates who's working with me from here, you know, I was telling him about what we do, and we're doing this project where we're basically building a mangrove forest from scratch to offset a sewage discharge. And he went, "Oh, how did this come about?" And I said, "Oh, well, you know, I was in a meeting and the client said the land was available, and I started thinking about the system and how things can work, and it's got habitat benefits and carbon and flood benefits and water quality." And he went, "Oh my God, how do you learn all this sort of stuff?" And I said, "Well, just you pick it up over time." But it's a matter of being able to have a broad understanding of things and then realizing you're going to continue to learn. Like I've been working for too many bloody years and I'm still learning. You know, I still get a job and I'll go, "Wow, that's really cool. We can do something a bit different and a bit innovative." So I would encourage you to get as broad an understanding as you can. And then once you get into the workplace, you'll find something that really floats your boat. And that's when you can really start specializing. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Genevieve, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I guess I just echo that it seems like there's getting a stronger and stronger focus on this idea of systems thinking as being core to environmental engineering, which I can only support. And I also want to echo this idea you can't do everything in the degree, because on a daily basis I work with how do we communicate this better? What's this narrative? How do we create open spaces so I can have different types of conversations with people from different backgrounds, right? Like you can't, that's maybe not the space. Maybe for some, they can think of how they can bring that in if that's the sort of path they want to go down. But I guess I've always, and I guess it did come from the degree, there is a digging deeper of like, what is the cause? What's the root cause? Why are we doing this? Why can't I finance this? What's like with, and when we're talking about energy system transition, when we're talking about circular economy and the world literally needing to look different really soon, you got to keep digging and digging and digging to what the blockers are. And so it's hard work, and a lot of people aren't ready to think like that. And I think probably there's something in environmental engineers that, because of that broadness and because of process skills or whatever, perhaps are ready to do that. And I don't know how that works in coursework though. I really don't, sorry.
So we've got a lot of experience on our panel, and I kind of want to tap into that a little bit. And in terms of how environmental engineering as a field is both globally and in Australia, and whether you think that Australia, where it sits in terms of how we're utilizing our environmental engineers enough, how's it growing, do you think, as a field? I don't know who wants to start us off on that.
Yes, Amber, if I may comment, because my area is waste management, solid waste management, and particularly over the years in terms of research looking at organic waste. But in Australia, we need more environmental engineers in waste, and waste companies are looking for people for young people, and it's a very exciting time because Australia is so far behind other countries. If we look at the community, generally, the community households are quite good at, relative to other countries, relative to other developed countries in not producing so much waste. But where we really fall down is what we do with the waste that's collected at the curbside. And in Australia, all waste goes to a big hole in the ground, a landfill, but they're big changes. I talked about policy before, so we now are not allowed to export plastics, glass, tyres, paper, cardboard, and increasingly state governments have very ambitious targets in terms of preventing waste go to landfill, and these are as ambitious as the European targets. Yet we're so far away from achieving that, and to achieve that, there's going to be enormous change. There's going to be a lot of processes that are implemented, both on the organic side. I'm a chair of what we call a technical review committee of Remanufacturing New South Wales. So I'm a disinterested party in granting companies money to develop processes to do something, for example, with recycled plastics, or at least plastic you put into your bin. They're not necessarily recycled at the moment, but these grants are for doing that. Sorry, Amber, I've got carried away there. What was your original question? It was
just around Australia and our use of environmental engineers.
Yes, look, I'll finish there, but I think I've set the picture there. There's enormous opportunity in this area because these processes are popping up, and they will be supported because these are, even though they're just policies, generally their legislation follows in to support those policies. So it's going to happen.
Look, I can only echo, and again, I'm talking about from the water and environment space, but I think there are massive opportunities for environmental engineers, especially as a society, if we eventually realise that we can't just keep, and my field is in urban water management primarily, we can't just keep growing our cities. We can't just keep putting in another, 1,000 dwelling developments because we don't have the space. And I gave a talk just before the Sydney Olympics at a water sensitive urban design thing for Western Sydney, where I remember at the time thinking about a lot of the metrics about how much land do you need to supply water to a kilometre of development? How much sediment do you produce? How many nutrients do you produce? How many thousand kilograms of litter do you produce? And what do you have to do to make these things a bit more sustainable? And I think as a bunch of environmental engineers, for me, we have to invest in how we build our urban developments more sustainably. Any of you who know the Aura development on the Sunshine Coast, I've worked on that from day one. And I remember the first thing that Stockland said when they bought the site was, Tony, what do we have to do to get our approvals? And it's been amazing to me to see that little bit of work now into a development which is the most successful planned community in Australia. Every house has got a rainwater tank on it, because that was one of the things I said, that every have a rainwater tank. We're going to much stormwater and it's going to affect the environment. Houses, roof, just that. Had nothing to do with me, but it was all about urban heat effects. We've got the most amazing water sensitive urban design and habitat, etc. And, to be involved in a project like that is really cool for me. And I think there are more and more opportunities like that every day. And we need environmental engineers who are passionate and knowledgeable and willing to give things a crack. Yeah.
I can say for the individual technology part, looks like Australia is actually behind of some leading country. But at the system level, particularly system management, Australia, I think, did very, very good. Maybe I use an example, as Tony mentioned, urban water management, catchment management, all those actually, if you look at Australia did so good. That's why, our drinking water, the water quality, I think is better than most of country. But because actually in Australia, we have a big land and the population is quite a small compared, a lot of other countries. So if we do not have many opportunity for us to implement the technology. That's why actually in many cases, and sometimes it's not our fault, it's because, because our environment is so good and they do not give us opportunity, let us to practice. For the environment engineer, you do need actually, I think, opportunity that you actually, maybe like use the water treatment as an example. For example, if you 10 years you just design one wastewater treatment, how you can impact you have the good skill in the wastewater treatment design. But in some country and their engineer, every year they can design 5 or 10 wastewater treatment plant. So then because their water, I think the quality is not very good. Actually, they try actually to incorporate all the technology which are available. And so you can say, and because our environment is so good, and because actually we are very good as management at the system level. So for the technical, individual technical part, and even though actually our engineer knows those, but we do not have opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Genevieve.
So the question was about the opportunities for environmental engineers. Is that, yeah?
Yeah, in Australia and globally.
Yeah. So I answer this from the perspective of someone who is doesn't do the design side of things from environmental, I'm not a design technical environmental engineer. I don't know what that term would be. But I deal with, actually, I've come across in companies that I deal with, a lot of environmental engineers, or at least engineers in different sort of strategy roles now. So that's really common, I'd say, that they use this sort of systems thinking, broad perspective to start making some kind of the big decisions that happen in organizations. So a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to the Mollycop environmental person. So Mollycop does recycled steel, big plant in New South Wales, and they're acquiring other whole businesses to fuel that. So mattress businesses and stuff, and so they have to figure out the logistics of collecting that, and it's a whole different frame of thinking from their sort of core business of recycled steel in some way, but they're having to look at the value chain differently because of these pressures around, and that is like recycling and getting more of the steel through their stream. But it is some of these other pressures, these bigger pressures on like what Bill was mentioning about waste. And there's the link between that as a technical challenge and that as a strategic acquisition kind of challenge is like someone who can work across that spectrum is going to be really valued. And I suppose that's what I like. One of the projects I'm working on at the moment, someone's come up with a really good idea for Outback Queensland, where we're looking at circular economy with a brewery, a hydroponics, aquaponics, and then maybe looking at microgrid. And if we can coordinate all these things, the value proposition for any individual thing wouldn't work. But if you can coordinate them, they stack up, right? So you need someone, which is sort of partially my role there, to sort of be able to understand and speak that language of what is that design, but also then make a pitch document and translate it and attract investment and all these sorts of things. So I suppose there's endless opportunities for environmental engineers, whether you stay in that design space, which is hugely, hugely important, or whether you move to business strategy, but you're still every day using the fact that you can quickly get across some of those technical aspects of it. And you've got that grounding, I think is still really valuable.
Thank you for that. Now, the microphone, so I'll hand over to any of our audience members that might have a question for one or all of our panelists. So is there anyone that wants to be first up? Yep, down the back.
Oh, a question for, sorry, I forgot your name on the right. No, the one on the right. Tony. Sorry. I just wanted to ask, like, what can we do better to manage waste? And what are other countries doing to like minimize their waste?
I'm probably not the right one to ask that because I'm not in the waste side of things. Water and environment.
Right, okay. Yeah.
So the waste that I deal with is sewage.
I guess to the panel then, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good, very pertinent question. So, and I was just thinking about this last night, actually, that so many of the targets that we see are recycling targets as opposed to reducing the production of waste. So this is always the best solution, not to produce waste in the first place. Australia has a very modest waste reduction target, but at least they do have one. And I think it's, well, I do know it's 10%. But it's over a long time frame, unfortunately, 20. Yes, so that's a good question. I'm just trying to, Genevieve might be able to answer this since she's lived in Europe for a number of years. But in the waste framework, the EU waste framework, I think the target is similar. The Australian target's per capita. We really need to think, though, about the total amount. Of course, if we're talking about per capita, we might be producing more waste than we were yesterday because we've got a bigger population. I don't know if Genevieve can answer that question. I should know, but
I can't. No, I don't get it. Not in the detail of that.
Can make some comments.
Yeah.
It's a question. I just want to clarify, when you talk about the waste, do you mean the solid waste or in general? Yeah. What I want to highlight, if you compare to many other countries, to be honest, Australia does not do very well in terms of to handle the waste. 20 years ago, everyone calls it waste. And 10 years ago, many countries do not call it waste anymore. They call it resource. So I use the two types of waste. One is wastewater. We still call it wastewater. Another one is municipal solid waste. Yeah. So I use Singapore as an example because I live there for more than 5 years. So in Singapore, they like the municipal wastewater, the sewage, and they can produce the clean water, just to use the membrane technology. And this technology actually is well established and it has been used in Singapore, Israel, South Africa, China, India, also US. Even actually in Australia, all the major capital city, Melbourne, Sydney, plus Adelaide, even I think Brisbane, also build such a membrane, facility try to recycle the water, produce the clean water from the wastewater. You can say, yeah, that's good resource. Another one is, once you can get the clean water, also some others, you have the nitrogen, phosphorus, they are nutrient, you also can recover. the organic, you also can recover as a, either turns them to, you can use what do you call it? Anaerobic digester to produce, to convert them to a biogas. You can see almost everything in the wastewater can be utilized. So that's why actually I mentioned in Singapore, they do not call this waste water anymore. They just sometimes they call it used water. Yeah, what that means that you could reuse. I use the municipal solid waste example. In Australia, most of our solid waste actually end up in the landfill. You just dump over there. But what I can tell you, in many, many countries, including Europe, they do not use a landfill anymore. And once, of course, actually at the beginning, you can recycle, the glass, plastic, so many things. All the rest, you still can send it to the incineration plant to burn them to generate the electricity. Based on the calculation, just from the municipal solid waste, you can generate at least half of the electricity you need for the whole city. Yeah, quite significant amount. I try to understand, why in Australia we do not do that. Some concerns you mentioned, when you burn this solid waste, there's some, toxic gas may actually produce, but actually it can be this. I think the risk can be solved by the technology. It's really in how you operate on design. As mentioned, Europe, Singapore, China, so many countries, even Japan, they also use the incineration plant to generate the electricity. So you burn, you get the electricity, and also actually you have, the ash come out, and you still can use this ash for some construction. Some of you are actually from the civil engineering, for the construction. You can see actually everything could be actually utilized. And so just want to highlight, waste is not a waste. It's actually a resource you put in the wrong place. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further thoughts from anyone? Genevieve?
Further thoughts. I thought, I like the end statement that waste is not a waste, it's a resource. And I guess it is also, it's not a particular area that I work in at the moment. Although I suppose circular economy and waste is, one and the same, they're crossing over. So it is that designing out the waste, or inherently in the model is that shared, that connectivity between different industries that use it, that happens all the time. It's really hard. Again, like what's blocking that is often like organizational, contractual, financing, all these sort of systems actually mean that our whole economy is quite siloed. And yeah, so additional, I also would think the way we do it in KIC with systems thinking, if we were given this sort of problem, you also have to look right back at the manufacturing of it and why we've got, it's like here I'm sort of completely environmentally minded, get so annoyed about looking at waste in these bins, but even still, if I'm asked to create 5 different piles of waste because of different types of plastic that are going to be recycled in different types of ways, and that's on me, I just don't think that's if there's another way to do, that's a systems, it's a behavioral, if I'm not willing to do that, then you're not going to get society to be able to do it. So there's this pragmatic sort of question there, but yeah, not coming from an expert area of waste.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. We've probably got time for one more quick question if anyone wants to chuck one out there. Yeah.
This one kind of just bumped into my head last minute, going off what you were saying, Genevieve. even if we put the entire onus on us to kind of go fully sustainable, to do what's right for the environment, how much impact can I make as an individual, and how much like policy is required? How much are companies responsible for, I guess, what's going on around us, especially with climate change?
I'm happy to start. I mean, luckily, I can't see you, but luckily you're an environmental engineer. So the onus is actually more heavily on you and the ripple effects you can create through organizations and policy and philosophy and actual action. Because I think there is a big question where we've put the onus on individuals in the design of how we respond to any of these things. And there's a bunch of reasons why it's kind of not necessarily fair, because the people that take it up, there's a huge, like we could go on for this forever, but the people that take it up, there's like a lot of burden then on doing that. Plus, is it really the highest point of leverage, given that we're in a systems transition? So it is by design of how we redesign our economy. And that's too much emphasis, you'd say, has been on individuals and too much even in the past. I think we're moving away from that now, but I remember 5 years ago you'd have all the companies saying, oh yeah, because consumers are putting pressure on us, that's why we're changing. Forget that. That's not why you should be changing. That's not an argument anymore. The world is changing. It's going net zero. You have to, waste is being eliminated. It's fundamental to your whole business. It's not just, when they said consumers were pushing us, it almost made them do incremental changes rather than making it more fundamental. So yes, there's a lot of pressure on you, but only because you're an environmental engineer, not because you're an individual, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from anyone?
I actually reckon I can only echo what Genevieve said. You got two great opportunities. One is an individual, because I'm a massive believer that we can't all sit back and wait for government to tell us what to do. People need to do it as champions. So you can be a champion. So you can reduce your waste. You can, look for opportunities to minimise your footprint. But the big one for me is you get into the workplace. You can make those changes. As I said, like for me, seeing Aura built, and I've been so frustrated in that the final piece of the pie that would have made that project really tick for me was we had an opportunity to put harvested stormwater into a water supply dam nearby, which would have meant we could have had 50,000 people coming into southeast Queensland, no net draw on the water supply system, and we've actually improved the receiving water quality downstream of it. So, and unfortunately, the stormwater harvesting scheme doesn't look like it's going to get up because of a whole bunch of reasons. But that really floats my boat in that I was able to look at Aura and I can go, I got them to do that, yeah? And this mangrove project we're building in Redland Bay, I've got that to work because it was my idea. I persuaded the client to do it. I got the approvals. And I'm now absolutely shit scared that it's not going to work because I hope the mangroves grow. But that really gives me such an immense sense of satisfaction that as an engineer, I've been able to make these things happen. I've been heavily involved in the Healthy Waterways movement in southeast Queensland, and I and my team have done all the modelling. We've convinced urban utilities to spend $400 million on nutrient removal. We've now got a Brisbane River, which has got nutrient levels that are about a third, if not a quarter, of what they were 20 years ago. We got seagrass coming back in Moreton Bay until the floods the other day when I suspect they might have got knocked around. Engineers can really do shit and make a difference. And I think it's really exciting for you guys because you're coming into the market at a time when you are in demand. So lap it up, make the most of it. You can make a difference as an individual, but more than anything else, you can make a difference as a professional.
Yes, agree with Tony and with Genevieve's point that net zero is coming. There's corporate expectations. If Australia wants to trade with the rest of the world. Well, Australia does trade heavily on its reputation for producing food, and it's going to be more and more pressure to do that sustainably, because people won't buy our products unless we have that reputation of not only producing high quality food but producing it sustainably. Our performance in terms of waste production is also going to be scrutinised. The world's becoming a very much smaller place, and it's up to environmental engineers to ensure that we remain competitive, and our environmental performance is integral to our to our economic viability. So as Tony says, you know, while you might be trying to do the right thing as an individual, separating out your waste, and it's your impact as a professional that's going to have a big influence. And things are changing, as Tony says, from the waste perspective. When I started lecturing here, I took students out to the Willawong hazardous waste facility as an exemplar of handling hazardous waste. And guess how hazardous waste was treated then? It was poured into the ground. It was mixed with concrete and poured into the ground. That was how we used to treat hazardous waste. And that doesn't seem so long ago. The pace of change is accelerating, and you can be as busy as you want to be as a professional environmental engineer. See, Wayne, do you want to?
I think you asked a very, very good question. Let me to explain how it works. First is the climate change. I think everyone agree. Climate change needs an effort from everyone, every organization. But how actually we can make it work? For the environmental issues or matters, policy is more important than technology. So if we want actually everyone to take action, we need the policy. How actually we can get a policy there? We need someone to take action at the beginning. If more and more people take action, the policy will be there very, very soon. But if no one to take action, because you know how the policy was made by the government, and if more people take action, the government will take care. And so that's why actually, maybe it's take time to the final goal, but we need someone to take action at the beginning. I think the environmental engineering student, it's our responsibility to take the action now. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Now we've reached the end of our hour. So just to finish up, I might get the panelists to just say, kind of in 30 seconds or less, any final thoughts, any advice to future environmental engineers that you want to share with us.
How come I always go first? Look, give it a crack. Have a go. You're going to have opportunities pop up, and don't be hesitant to put your hand up and have a go. Find yourself an organisation that will back you and have a go. That's been my mantra since I was a graduate, and when I got into consulting, you know, opportunities popped up, and I put my hand up and said, I'll have a go at that. And it's how my career went, but I think it's how you can really develop. Yeah, it's deep, isn't it? Give it a crack.
No, but very, very appropriate. I mean, I'd just add that don't be afraid of moving around. Now that COVID, well, hopefully we're coming out of the pandemic, that travel will become easier. So Genevieve has done a PhD in Germany and worked overseas quite a bit. That's a great example. The world is getting smaller, and the skills we're talking about, you need the world over. You've got a very exciting career ahead of you.
I think if you compare to 20 or 30 years ago, environmental engineering became more and more important. That's how I mentioned earlier, because the scopes of the environmental engineering expand a lot compared to 20 or 30 years ago. This means actually so many opportunities are available and so many things you can do, especially the environmental engineering, open this opportunity, even though actually when you take some specific task, you find you still need a little bit more knowledge. But I think as Tony and Bill mentioned, actually, do not worry, you can learn through this process. So do your best, and this is the right time for you.
Yeah, okay. So advice, I guess it's, as you were all speaking, I was going back through, we had a smaller cohort, probably, I don't know, than what currently was there. And if I think of all the people that I went through environmental engineering with and all the different and like literally amazing things they're doing, like owning companies that have then been having to restructure, but really successful companies doing startups, different flood modeling. Me, I've gone down this sort of strategy kind of whatever, there's energy transition and sustainability transition stuff. Like it's so varied, but genuinely then like makes me actually excited for you guys that are now starting to know you'll all end up in different spaces. Because you all have slightly different passions and you all hook into different things that really respond to you, that you respond well to, because environmental engineers probably are a little bit more diverse in their perspectives, tend to be perhaps than other engineers. I don't know. Just happened that way in my cohort at least. So I guess I'm saying have a crack as well.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you for everyone for coming today and listening, and thank you to our chemical and civil engineering student societies for putting this on. And of course, a massive thank you to our panelists for sharing your knowledge and some of your experience with us. You've given us a lot of really interesting insights to think on. So thank you.
Can we also give a round of applause to Amber, please? She's done an amazing job moderating. It was very last minute, but thank you so much. All right, so we have food upstairs, food and refreshments. So if you want to make our way upstairs, we can network, eat, do whatever.